In this video, I'm going to share 7 ChatGPT tips that will transform your genealogy research. Most people are only scratching the surface when it comes to writing effective prompts, so my tips will make ChatGPT your expert genealogy helper. Let's get to it. My first tip is stop using the chat box like it's Google's search page. When you type a question into ChatGPT, you're having a conversation. This is called prompting. You're getting the AI to collaborate with you in your research. It's like hiring a research assistant, so tell it that. I'll show you an example. I've been trying to figure out why one branch of my family moved from Brooklyn to a small town in New Jersey. Here's one way of asking. Why would 2 people in their early 20s move from Brooklyn, New York to Westfield, New Jersey in the 1890s? Submit that. You know, there's a lot of meat in this, but I could be a high school student writing an essay on social history. It's just a bit generic. Let's do better. I'm going to open up a new chat, and this time I'm going to ask the exact same question, but I'll give the AI a specific role. You are an expert genealogist helping me with my family research. I start most of my prompts with this. And then, same question. Well, it's congratulating me for being specific, and here we go. A lot of this is the same as the previous answer, but here's the difference. It now knows that I'm interested in genealogical research, and the final section is focused around my interests. Key takeaway, start with a role. You're an expert in genealogy, or a job title. You're a professional genealogist. My second tip is always provide context. Without context, ChatGPT can give you generic responses that might be completely wrong for your specific situation. Let me show you an example. Court records can give rich insight into incidences in the lives of your ancestors. Like this petty crime court record, they often give you names, occupation, and a full address. But frustratingly, dates of birth are not frequent in any records I've looked at. So here's a question for ChatGPT. John Smith appeared in court as an infant accompanied by his guardian, Tom Brown. What age might John Smith have been? Submit that. Here we go. So ChatGPT advises me that John was probably less than 1 year old at the time of the court appearance. What I take from that is if I'm searching for birth records, that gives me a nice narrow range of a time period to search for. Now this answer seems reasonable, but it may be way off base. Here's what happens when I give it the context of location and time period. The year was 1880, and the place was England, United Kingdom. You see? Huge difference. With the context of England in 1880, it's telling me that back then, an infant legally referred to any person under the age of 21. So it's now revising its estimates. John Smith could have been anywhere from a newborn up to 20 years old. You got a word that in a legal context means something completely different depending on when and where you're researching. The takeaway? Include the time period and the location in your prompts to get the right historical interpretation. My third tip is to use natural language in your prompts. Let me explain that. If you search for example prompts, you may land on Reddit posts like this. They come from a trend in what's called prompt engineering to produce massively long prompts with special syntax that looks like programming. Don't be discouraged. I'm a programmer and I don't do this for my genealogy research. My recommendation is to type in the way that you talk. However, I'd also avoid following well-meaning advice that you should talk to ChatGPT like you talk to a friend. But friends know your background, context, your goals, and the subtext. For example, my friends know where I live and that I can't just drop by the courthouse in Smallville, Arizona to look at their archives. I need alternatives. My advice is to type like you're describing your task or goal to a helpful professor of genealogy who doesn't know you. Use natural descriptive language, include all the details they need to help you, be conversational but complete. To illustrate this, I'll show you some prompts of mine as part of the next tip. My fourth tip is to break up a complex task into multiple steps. In another video on this channel, I showed how to use AI to transcribe a blurry old newspaper document, make corrections, and transform the data into a spreadsheet of the people in it. This is a complex task. What I didn't do was throw everything at the AI all at once. This could have been the prompt, asking it to transcribe, correct, and format everything in one go. But my advice is don't pack too much into one prompt. Work in steps or stages. Ask for one thing, then the next thing. Here's why this works better. First, you can catch and fix errors early before they compound into bigger problems. Second, you're working in collaboration with the AI and checking everything it does along the way. In that video, I split this up into 4 stages. The first step was to transcribe the text, and that step-by-step approach was absolutely necessary because the AI didn't get the faithful transcription right the first time. But because I was working in steps, I could correct those transcription errors before moving on to the next step. If I'd done it all in one massive prompt, those early errors would have carried through to the final spreadsheet, and I would have had to start over again. So, when you have a complex genealogy task, break it down into individual steps. You get better results and save time in the long run. My 5th tip is to tell ChatGPT how you want its output formatted. You may be looking to summarize documents, to compare records, or to extract specific detail. If you don't tell it how to format the output, I find it's a bit too fond of bullet points, which is great if you're getting it to read a long manuscript and give you the key points, but you may want something different. For me, it's usually either bullet points, paragraphs, lists, or a tabular format. I'm often extracting genealogical data for a spreadsheet, and that's where I want it to give me a table I can copy. Here's an old will. I just want to give it this paragraph with the beneficiaries, and I want to get the details into a spreadsheet. Into ChatGPT, please give me a list of the people in this text. I've copied a section from the document. It gives me a numbered list. Now, I tell it I want it as a table. So it gives me a 1-column table with a header of name. I think it can split that name. Please provide as a table with 2 columns. So now it's helpfully split the name, but this header of name surname isn't great. I always specify the header because I usually don't like the column names it chooses. Please use the header first name, last name. Here we go. And because I specified a table, I get this handy copy table button up here. I can copy this and paste it into Google Sheets or a spreadsheet application of your choice. So to recap, tip number 5, specify the formatting that you want. My 6th tip prevents generic responses by using examples in your prompts. There are 2 parts to this. First, think of an example of what you want. And second, turn that example into a simple template. Let me show you what I mean. As usual, I start with the role. You are an expert in genealogy. Then I assign the task. Help me find records for John Smith, who was born in Ireland in 1890 and emigrated to the United States sometime between 1920 and 1930. This is quite specific, but I don't want an essay from ChatGPT. I want concrete suggestions. To guide it, I can think of an example like this. Search birth records for the time period 1889 to 1991 in Ireland. But in my experience, I find that if I give ChatGPT one specific example, it can latch onto it, and much of its response is too tailored around the example. I want it to give me suggestions I haven't thought of. I mean, that's the whole point of this collaboration, right? So here's the clever part. I'm going to turn this single example into a template. I'll change birth records, give myself brackets, to type of record. For the time period, give myself the brackets year or date range. In, I'll say location. Now you may be thinking, in a previous tip I said use natural language, not something that looks like programming. Yes, this tip diverges a bit from that advice, but it's not too complicated, right? And I don't think you need to get more complicated than something like this. Back to ChatGPT and extend my prompt. Here's how I want the suggestions. Search type of record for the time period, year or date range in location. And now I'm going to give you bonus part of the template. Using name variations, open brackets, list of name variations typical of the region, close brackets. Submit this, and here we go. If I scroll down, I see 6 categories of suggestions here. Now, if you're an experienced researcher, this may not be a big wow. You may be familiar with all of these records. But for me, the naturalization records is something I haven't really taken a look at. So I'll dive into that a bit more. I will say that there are a lot of categories that are missing here. So here's my next tip. Tip number 7, be like young Oliver Twist here. Ask for more. ChatGPT has given me 6 types of records. Please give me more suggestions for different types of records. Submit that. Conversation key not found. Try starting a new conversation. That's kind of new. There you go. A live exercise. Always interesting. Let me hit retry. Okay. Computer says no. All right. Let me open up a new ChatGPT. I'm in the temporary chat mode, so it won't remember what I've done before. It may also not give me the same answer. That'll be interesting. Let's see. Hit submit. Census, passenger list, federal census. Yeah, naturalization records and death records. And once again, I will just copy my plea. Please give me more suggestions for different types of records. Submit. What I'm looking to see is if it's going to give me court records, for example. Baptism records. City directories. Griffith's valuation. This one was jumped out at me as being missing. The Irish Petty Sessions court records. Marriage records. The passenger manifest. Okay. So now I'm up to what? 16 types of records. There's another one kind of comes to mind available on Ancestry and other places, and that is, of all things, it's the dog license records. Particularly useful if your Irish ancestors were subsistence farmers, as so many were. Let's give it one more go. Copy my previous instruction. Please give me even more suggestions for different types of records. Now we're into less commonly used or more specialized records. I'll just scroll down through these. Probate and will records. I'm not so sure that they should be relegated to the obscure list. So now we're down to 30 suggestions, and that's enough to be going on with. Notice how it still didn't have the dog license records, so it's not exhaustive. But you can keep asking for more. You can keep doing this. At some point, it will start repeating itself. But unless you're a professional genealogist, I'd be surprised if a new avenue didn't come to light. So that was tip number 7. Don't settle. Ask for more. I'm going to end on a bonus 8th tip that extends beyond ChatGPT. My advice is to try alternatives. In some of my tips, I've drawn from examples from a tutorial video on using AI for transcription of a blurry old newspaper document. I used the free tools for my tutorials, and free ChatGPT just hit me with limits and it could not complete the task. However, the alternative free Claude, Gemini, and Perplexity were successful. I have no doubt that the subscription ChatGPT would also have been fine. So, my last tip for you is that if you don't have a subscription, don't limit yourself to just one tool. Try the others. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses. I typically cycle through these ones, but there are others. Don't forget Microsoft's Copilot. People overlook that one, but it's built into the Bing search engine. All the tips and prompting techniques I showed you here are valid for the other tools. So, of these 8 tips, let me know in the comments which one made the biggest difference for you. And if you've got any advice I haven't covered, please drop that in too. Hope that helps. Best of luck with your family research.